This is the engine bay inspection of the 2020 Kia Telluride. So the prospective buyer had informed us to pay close attention to a repaired leak that was disclosed by the seller, and we were able to document that right down there where that rusty bolt is, and then down in the other two, that is the oil filter adapter housing that mates the oil filter canister to the engine and services the lubrication system. It's still wet. Now, I don't see anything dripping on the belly pan at this time. You can see that may be what they were talking about in terms of an arrested leak. That what they repaired. There's a gasket on the back of that plastic housing. It's plastic to metal and high failure point on stuff like this. It's not exclusive to Kia. It's just the side effect of using a plastic housing as opposed to a metal one, because of the thermal expansion rates are different. So the plastic, it heats and cools faster, different than the metal does, and it kind of wears those gaskets out a little faster. So if that's what they replaced, well, go ahead and document that. I'd want to confirm that that's what was repaired. Otherwise, I did not find any other leaks, signs of rodent damage, poor condition of fluids, chemicals in here. I'm able to see this upper engine mount here, so it's in good condition. Not seeing any leaks on the valve covers. I removed these vanity covers right here so I can peek in here and look and see if anything's been living on the engine. I'm not seeing any signs of that, not seeing anything chewed through, like the foam on these panels over here behind the engine. No high upper oxidation like on the flash oxidation on the ABS module. There's a little bit of spot kind of oxidation starting on the thermostat housing here. Well, excuse me, I'd say thermostat housing. So just be aware of that. There's some kind of what looks like flash oxidation or flash rusting. This vehicle might have lived some of its life maybe in the east or maybe over on the coast. For 4 years old, it is starting to show some signs of oxidation. A good example too is those rusty bolts over here. Just something to be aware of. It's not eaten into anything, but it's already here, and we're going on now 5 years old. So we're just going to go ahead and document a little bit of that engine bay kind of crustiness. Same deal here with these valve cover bolts and these coil retaining bolts. I don't want to see it that high on the engine. Why is it rusted all the way up here? That tells me there was a high moisture environment or a very salty kind of coastal environment. It might have been over in the Sound, might have just been coastal, but that's when you have a vehicle that lives on a coast like that, you start to see that up here. Again, there's a lot of plastic in here. Plastic is not reactive to rust, so to its credit, there's not a lot to rust up here because most of it's plastic. So but just be mindful of that. We would watch as the vehicle is, during its continued ownership, pay attention to stuff like this. That's a ground, so it's not rusty, but if that ground looks like that might feed up into the injector rails or the coil rail over here, you can see these grounds. There's 4 of them kind of tucked up in here, and then they lead through this conduit over around here. So those grounds obviously service something major. So that's the kind of stuff you want to watch for. If you start seeing rust and things building up on that, the preventative maintenance is to clean that off. So otherwise, other than the documented oil filter adapter housing wetness and these kind of spot rust from this possible high moisture, high salt environment, I am going to go ahead and give the engine bay a pass at this time. I'm not seeing anything mission critical in the engine bay. Thank you. This is the exterior inspection of the 2020 Kia Telluride. I apologize in advance if there's any windy noise. We're up on the higher altitudes where we're at right now, and so there's some wind up here. So we're starting with the front left quarter panel of the vehicle. What I'm looking for is deviations in maybe metallic flake for the paint repair, paint correction. Looking for deviations in paneling, like there has been a collision where the vehicle was pushed in. Now, I didn't document any of that in the core support or any front end damage on the vehicle in the engine bay inspection. That came back nice and clean. So we're gonna walk the body, because if you take a smack right here, you can still push back these really thin sheet metal panels. These panels are just really cosmetic. You don't even need them to operate the vehicle. It's very, very thin gauge sheet metal. It's really just for aesthetics and aero. So any little deviation and pushing and damage on that, this lamp is mounted in plastic. So that plastic is mounted to maybe another piece of plastic, and then it goes over the sheet metal here. So it doesn't take a lot of force to push that back and cause some deviations here. So, but anyways, we're gonna walk the car. I'm looking for panel gaps, looking at front A pillar mating to front quarter panel, that comes back square, following A pillar up and around, coming down, following B pillar, that comes back square, walking back to driver's side C pillar, checking that out, that comes back square. Walking back, I pulled on these bumper covers. We reach under, grab them, see if there's any clips or anything broken on those. Not feeling anything, noticing anything. Walking to the other side, pulling that. No, bumper cover's fine. Looking for if the bumper cover's been off or on. So we watch and see if there's any paint flakes or any sort of marring or rubbing along this seam. It's not unreasonable that maybe a bumper cover might come off in a vehicle's life for some repairs underneath it. There might be ADAS radar kind of eyes that are under here that might have to be repaired. That's all normal, but they can't be coming off 2, 3, 4, 5 times, because then eventually you'll start seeing damage. Same deal with the front of the vehicle. In this case, I'm not seeing that. We're going to continue walking the vehicle, so we're going to look for witness marks up here on the struts, these power struts for the rear hatch. Have they been moved? Has this been taken off before? That could imply like maybe this got smacked and these got shifted, or they had to be replaced. I'm not seeing that. Same with these hinges up here. You can see the paint bond is still here. It's not even broken. So no one's been on these bolts. The witness marks on here, the paint is still fresh from factory. No one's putting tools on here. Even if you took a hand tool and was gentle as you could be, you're gonna take some paint off. And again, sometimes these things have to come off for repairs, but no one's been in here, so there's no damage there. Moving around the vehicle, moving to C pillar, passenger side, same deal, looking for panel gaps here. Not seeing any. I have checked all 4 wheels. I'm not seeing any cosmetic damage, any curbing, any rash, like the vehicle's been, you know, taken into a curb. So the wheels coming back cosmetically, they're fine. No vibrations documented on the highway, high-speed vibrations, implying maybe the car took into the snow and the wheel got maybe bent, even though there's no visible damage to the wheels. So going to B pillar here, that's square, and going to A pillar, that's square as well. Moving around front, looking at hood matching, we're following that line, that's true. Gonna walk this all the way around, make sure there's no deviations here, and following it back up and around. Hood is square. So the exterior as a whole, the vehicle gets a pass. Thank you. Okay, this is the underbody inspection of the 2020 Kia Telluride. So I apologize, it's very kind of bright out here, kind of hard to see. I am able to see really easily under this vehicle. There's not too much aero under here. It's nice to see. The more plastic and the more aero under here, the harder it is for a technician and inspector or mechanic to diagnose a problem. So aero can be mildly beneficial for fuel economy. Mostly it's for noise. So it's good to see there's only a minimal amount here. They didn't seal the car off. The other problem with aero too is it can contain a lot of debris, contain salt, contain dust, dirt, rocks, all manner of stuff held up against the car. I really don't like to see aero underneath the vehicle. It just generally ends up hiding stuff. So we're gonna walk the vehicle, starting with the left. I documented a little bit of surface rust on the welds on the subframe for the front left of this vehicle. The subframe is what carries the suspension and sometimes the power steering or electric power steering rack for the vehicle. It's a very thick, very robust piece of metal that's installed on the vehicle. It can take a lot of rust before it becomes a problem. So surface superficial rust typically starts on the welds, and I'm not seeing it go too deep in the vehicle. So it is here, we're gonna document that, but I'm not marking it as an extreme concern at this time. Walking the vehicle, looking at the exhaust. The exhaust is that kind of lighter colored pipe you see there. It's actually in really good condition. I would assume that, I thought I'd maybe see rusting on the exhaust pipe before I would see it on the subframe. Exhaust pipe's made out of a very mild steel. You can't use, you know, you don't end up using very high quality metals, often not like stainless steel or anything for exhaust piping, and it's relatively thin. So if you have any problems with your exhaust or rust with under the vehicle, one of the first places you want to check is the exhaust. So moving around the rear of the vehicle, coming around to check underneath, excuse me, hold on. So we've got what appears to be a full-size tire under here. It would appear that it is, oh, excuse me, it's not a full-size tire. It's a full diameter tire, but it is a donut. It's a half-width tire. Looking at the rear subframe under here, looks like the rear axles have a fair amount of, I'm not going to say significant because it looks surface level, but there is a fair amount of rust down here on the axles and on the struts. So the that kind of rusting, I apologize, it's very hard to see, but there's a fair amount of rusting on the shocks back here. That rust can eventually eat itself up around the shock and into the seals and cause them to fail. I don't like to see that level of rust on the rear shocks. That's something that the suspension of this vehicle is perfectly fine, serviceable as it stands now. 20, 30, 40,000 miles down the road, if that rust begins to get up and around through the paint, eats around the seals for the shock arm, it's going to become a problem. Roughly same amount of rear subframe rust as I've seen on the front. This vehicle, depending on the pictures, this vehicle had to have lived some of its life around a somewhat saltier environment. Again, maybe coast or maybe East Coast, Midwest, something like that. But again, it's not at a level that is raising a big red flag. So walking passenger rear, looking at more exhaust, the rear differential and its housing and all the electronic circuitry back here looks good, nice and dry. Walking the vehicle, same thing, exhaust pipe coming up to front right, same deal. The amount of rust and oxidation is consistent. It is good to see that it looks like the exhaust system, they must have used a fairly high quality metal on that. It's really rust free. I doubt it's been replaced because of how new the vehicle is, and the whole exhaust system wouldn't be replaced. So if you had a failure like a catalytic converter or something like that, the cap might be shiny new, but the rest of the exhaust would not. So the whole thing looks pretty good. Moving around the front, now I did not document any drips or leaks that went back down on the subframe. The oil pan does look like, to be honest, it does look like it had once had a leak on it that has been repaired or arrested. Where that area is on the same side as the oil filter adapter housing, so I'm going to assume that's the likeliest culprit. I don't see any transmission leaks or the wet pans on that side. So as a whole, other than the documented points of rust on the subframe and the little wetness on the pan over here and the rust on the rear shocks, I am going to go ahead and give the undercarriage a pass. Thank you. This is the interior inspection of the 2020 Kia Telluride. Let's talk about a couple things. Right away, we'll talk cosmetics. The vehicle is in good condition. Not seeing any signs of damage front or rear seats. The steering wheel is still in fairly serviceable condition. It's showing some shininess, some patina here from just 70,000 miles or so, 5+ years. The infotainment center, there's a significant delay between the HVAC controls. If you were to adjust these HVAC controls and then get in here to the where is our HVAC here? I apologize. Rear climate. Okay, so not a lot of intuitiveness to this display. In any case, when you adjust these, as you raise the fan speed, it will show that there's no fan. And likewise with the temperature, you raise the temperature all the way up or all the way down, it won't show a change. If you fiddle with it, it will, or if you wait, I noticed with the fan, if you wait a while, it will. It's just slow electronics. It kind of just speaks to the budget discount setup on this. That's not a failure of the system. It's more of something that as a driver, it would, if you would notice this, and it would, over time, it would just become an annoyance, at least for someone who's very particular about these controls, having them split between both the touchscreen and the HVAC controls down here. Otherwise, driver's information system comes back with a clean bill of health. All the controls up here do actually work. The prospective buyer wanted me to check the tilt function of the driver's seat. Indeed, the driver's seat does not tilt forward. It tilts back, but will not tilt forward. I'm going to kind of bump it a little bit because I don't want to lay it all the way down, but you can see it kind of moving there, but it will not come back up. It will slide forward, back, up, down, but it will not sit up. So that's something that I do want to confirm that the prospective buyer did notice. They wanted that checked, and yeah, that tilt motor in there is not working correctly as it should. Now it could be a switch, could be the motor. Unlikely it's the motor. The tilt motor is probably the same motor. If you just reverse the polarity, if you send it to positive, the seat will sit up. Send it to negative, seat will go down. So the motor probably works fine. It's probably a switch that's failed in here. Not unreasonable to see stuff like that on fairly newer vehicles. Kias, Chryslers, FCA, Stellantis products. Electronics tend to be a little bit of a weaker point for them. So you're going to see this stuff as these vehicles age. Switches, turn signals. It won't be the ones outside the vehicle. It'll be the ones in here. The turn signal, this will have to be replaced. Maybe the horn will stop working because you got to get in here and replace the circuitry that closes the circuit for the horn. Switches will just kind of stop intermittently working. That's really par for the course with Kia, Hyundai, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep. Those are just things that it is what it is, and typically when those vehicles are purchased, it's reflected in the price. So not going to worry about that too much, but that is confirmed. Rear functionality works just fine. The seats do fold forward. The servo control mechanism that releases the latch and the spring, the return spring, everything works fine like that. Moving this back. So already we see a little one has moved in. In these types of vehicles, when they are kind of like kitty haulers and stuff like that, I will check underneath mats, underneath rails. I check for like French fry debris or milkshake and things like that. That can get down the rails and gum it up. I'm not seeing any of that. Same with the back seats as well. I was able to kind of inspect the rails back here. Didn't see any of that. So other than the documentation for the tilt motor here and that kind of sluggishness in the infotainment, the interior is going to get a pass. Thank you. All right, this is the trunk inspection of the 2020 Kia Telluride. So let's talk about it. We got our little shelf here. It's a shelf. It's what it does. No problems with that. A little bit of kind of wear in here. To be honest, I'd rather see wear in here than nothing at all. It means people have been in here. I've seen cantaloupes. I've seen bananas, all well past their expiration date, left in vehicles. People couldn't find them, didn't know where they were. Well, here's where they were. Maybe it was something rolled under a seat, rolled in here, somehow got forgotten. Maybe a kiddo walked by, opened this, thought, haha, I'll save one for later. In goes the banana, and you never can find it. So the spare tires access from here. This is how you drop it. It's probably on a worm gear, lets the tire down. The emergency roadside kit appears to be intact and complete in here. That's the scissor jack and the lug nut removal tool. Dropping this back down. I'd like to document that I noticed these two seats here, they're not aligned. And if these are power seats, they're both locked in, but they're not aligned. I don't see any functionality back here for adjusting them via power. They have their mechanical releases, but they're not aligned. So there's some issue here with the hinging or things like that. So I pay close attention to that. In an emergency situation, I wouldn't want this to snap forward or throw someone forward. So this is something I would go ahead and mark as minor, but the buyer needs to be aware of this and get this addressed, or solve this problem for them so that there's not a safety concern here. The other one is there's the second row buttons here, which release these two seats up here. Now there's a child seat attached over here. I did go ahead and push the right side button. I got no response. I'm going to assume that it's either deactivated or arrested because there is a child seat in the right second row. But otherwise, those buttons, I'm going to go ahead and give a pass. I cannot test this side, but I'm going to go give a pass. The trunk comes back, other than the documentation with the rear seat, the trunk comes back with a clean bill of health. Thank you. This is the code scan portion of the inspection video for the 2020 Kia Telluride. So I want to talk about a couple things. I did not find any issues with the powertrain control module, the transmission control module. In fact, I found no code stored anywhere. Now, when a vehicle enters a shop and it undergoes repairs, one of the standard operating procedures is if a vehicle does come in with a code, and the data, when a tech were to look at the live data and not see any data that is matching what the code is presenting, it's reasonable to believe that code could be cleared out and it might not return. The reason why I bring that up is because I found absolutely no code stored in this vehicle, and typically that means that the vehicle's computers have been forcibly reset. Oftentimes I'll find batteries for the failed telematics unit in the dash. I'll find codes for body control module codes like steering in the dash, columns, sensors facing the driver, temperature sensors, things like that. The computers came back as clean as a whistle. So more than likely, just the car did come into the shop, and during normal inspection at the facility, the codes were likely cleared out. Now that being said, during the drive, I did not document any sort of misbehaviors with any of the fuel air systems, any of the engine systems, control systems, the transmission systems. The vehicle shifted as it should. So there's nothing in there to lead me to believe that anything was being hidden, but it was very likely the codes were cleared out. I was able to check the readiness on the oxygen sensors for the engine. They came back with a clean bill of health, so no concerns there. I do want to talk about, I was able to pull up the engine coolant temp sensors here and just kind of watch them, and that's normal. So that's not what I'm concerned about. But then why I didn't include this under the interior inspections, because I wanted to show the relationship here. Now, when I first started this vehicle, I noticed that the left vents on this side of the vehicle were much warmer than the right side. I always cycle the heat full hot, full cold. When I brought the RPMs up to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 RPMs, immediately all of the vents got warm. So that tells me it's not a problem with the blend door actuator or anything in the dash. It's a problem with coolant delivery to the heater core in the dash that supplies heat to the vehicle. So as we've been sitting here, they for the most part appear to have evened out, but for about 80% of the drive, the left side of the car was noticeably warmer than the right side of the car. What does that mean? Well, in this case, like again, because I was able to tell that it wasn't a blend door or something that in the dash electromechanical that controls the blending of the temperatures, more than likely that's either a restriction in the heater core or it is just a kind of a design, a QC issue with Kia. Maybe the flow through the heater core is not, it's not looping or flowing in the direction that it should. There's not really a case for having a car when you command at full temperature that one side is colder or warmer than the other. If the driver wants his vehicle to be maximum temperature on all quadrants or all portions of the vehicle, then that's what it needs to be. So that's something I want to document in the code scan. So again, buyer needs to be aware of that. It could be intermittent thing. It could have been cobweb deal if this car has been sitting. Maybe there was a flow issue. I did redline this vehicle multiple times to make sure that it was working correctly. That raises the pressures and the flow through the heater core. I advise that the buyer do that as well, time to time. Just give it a, we call it an Italian tune-up. So do that every once in a while and just monitor this because typically the first symptom of that is just poor flow through the heater core. Now, the other possibility that could be, which is contraindicated in this case by these temperatures, is a head gasket. So if you had exhaust gas making it into the water jacket, bypassing the head gasket, the air would collect typically the highest points of the vehicle. One of those is the heater core. But because these temperatures are staying very stable and the vehicle is not struggling to cool itself and it's not having any idle or fuel air issues, that's contraindicated. So what I think this is just a restriction in either the heater core or it's just a design glitch or issue with quality control with Kia. But in any case, the code scan does get a pass. I want the buyer to be aware of this and to monitor that during operation. Thank you. Okay, this is the conclusions video of the 2020 Kia Telluride vehicle inspection. Again, I apologize for the wind out here. Did not find any major concerns with exterior. Did document some of the areas of rust underneath the vehicle for the underbody. I'd like to see the shocks in the rear be paid attention to. The suspension is still fully serviceable condition. No concerns with operation, but just be aware that when the vehicle finally reaches a mileage where suspension componentry begins to fail, I would bet that the first failure is going to be in those shocks back here. Engine bay, well, let's document the oil filter adapter housing is wet. I'm not seeing any drips down to the ground. I'm not seeing a dirty oil pan. The vehicle has been idling here for a fair amount of time. I'm not seeing any drips, again, coming out of the bottom of the vehicle. The engine bay, with the exception of the little high points of the rust up on the coils, which imply high moisture, high salt environment. I'm not seeing anything significant in there. Interior came back mostly with a clean bill of health. It did pass. I did document the HVAC heater core control issue on the code scan portion of the video. The trunk gets a pass, and the rear seats have that oddball adjustment where they're both locked in, but they're not quite straight. So otherwise, from front to back, I am going to go ahead and give this vehicle a pass. There's nothing significant on this vehicle that would raise a significant cause for concern. And then yes, the tilt motor or the switch for the tilt motor for the driver's seat forward up down is inoperable in the forward motion. So thank you very much.